While scholars have extensively researched bootlegs of music concerts, bootlegs of theater have not been studied, even though they are a crucial aspect of the contemporary theater fandom experience. This is a significant gap in understanding how audiences relate to theater, especially because theater is a medium, is relatively expensive and inaccessible. Tony Maria Stickler. Hello everyone, welcome to the video. My name is Jacob Spruce, and I will be discussing the ethics of bootlegs for my final presentation for my contemporary topics in theater class. Now I could talk all day about so many different details surrounding bootlegs, but I only have 10 minutes. Because of that, I'm going to be focusing mostly on the ethical positives and negatives of bootlegs. Now with this, I'm not diving into heavy discussion on most of these topics that I will be talking about in the presentation. So if you want more information and more details, as told by much smarter people than me, I have linked a video in the description and then a thesis as well. Now let's begin by defining what Broadway bootlegs are. Bootlegs are secret, illegal videos taken by people during performances. They're typically taken on phones, usually in lower quality. Sometimes bootlegs are even just the audio of a show. Bootlegs tend to be shared amongst younger folks, and for the sake of this presentation, I'll be defining younger people as teenage to 20-year-olds. Most boots are being shared nowadays through YouTube, Tumblr, Google Drive, and even Pornhub. With the prevalence of social media amongst young people, bootlegs tend to have a very fast spread to a lot of people online. Now to me, this is a very good thing, because Broadway is becoming more popular amongst younger audiences, despite those audience being those who is least able to see shows. If you look at which shows are most popular with young people, you'll find that those are the ones with bootlegs of them easily accessible online. Some popular examples are Be More Chill, Wicked, Dear Evan Hansen, Hamilton, Mean Girls, Beetlejuice, and plenty more. Yes, the content in these shows is typically relatable to younger folks, but the ability to actually watch these shows forms an even greater connection than just being able to listen to it on Spotify. Let's talk a little bit more about the accessibility of Broadway in general. There is a massive cost of traveling to New York City. From hotels, food, travel, and then Broadway tickets, a person would have to spend hundreds of dollars before they can even step foot into a theater. Tickets themselves can range anywhere from $80 for the cheapest seats to $300 for the prime seats. Double that for a show like Hamilton, and then double that again if you're traveling with a friend, or if you're a whole family traveling. This is an overarching problem for all of Broadway, which leads to a need for bootlegs, especially if you're from outside of New York City. So if the cost of Broadway is keeping people from seeing shows, then what is the harm in a person viewing a bootleg? If a person were never going to pay to travel to New York City to see a show, are they taking away money from a production by watching a bootleg? I would argue that bootlegs are a way for shows to potentially make money from younger folks who are not able to go see the shows on Broadway. These people are the ones who purchase merchandise, who stream cast albums, and promote the shows for free on their social media accounts. So as a 19-year-old girl from West Virginia streaming a slime tutorial, quote-unquote, of Beetlejuice hurting the production, I would lean on the side of probably not. Now, there's an argument against bootlegs that is commonly held by theater makers, that bootlegs are, quote-unquote, killing theater and decreasing ticket sales. Why would a person pay to see a show on Broadway if they could just watch a recording of it online for free? This argument is pretty much shared through other mediums of art as well, from books, to movies, to music, to video games. But I think the difference here is that theater as an art form functions on a fundamentally different level than those of the aforementioned forms. The experience of watching a bootleg is not comparable at all to seeing a show live. It is a commonly held belief by almost every theater goer that there is no experience that could replace that of seeing a show in person. You could get the full experience of reading a book or listening to an album through illegal means, but this is not the same for theater productions. No one has watched a vertical cell phone recording of Spring Awakening and thought, yeah, that's good enough for me. I never want to see this in person. In fact, most bootlegs do the opposite. Bootlegs spark interest in shows, especially those who are not widely successful off-Broadway or on the West End. Heather's off-Broadway run in 2014 was not a huge success. But after a bootleg was released online of the show after it closed, a large fandom exploded on social media. Over the next few years, the production made a bunch of money from royalties from regional and high school productions, and eventually, the show opened again on the West End in 2018 to much success. And this isn't the first time this has happened to a show. Be More Chill is another popular example. Now, there's a pretty well-known Broadway creator and performer who has a very strong opinion on bootlegs that I wanted to touch upon. Lin-Manuel Miranda. You all know him. You know him. On Tumblr, he openly spoke about bootlegs, speaking in opposition of them. He believes that bootlegs inherently ruin a person's first experience with a show, that, as a viewer, you lose the nuances and atmosphere of the performances. I agree with him, he is correct here, but I believe that his thinking is coming from a not correct place. When viewing bootlegs, people know that they're not getting a full experience. Bootlegs are just a look of what the show is. They inspire people, young people especially, to save up money to buy tickets to see tours and regional productions of the shows. Bootlegs are getting your art out to more people, and as a creator, that should be a good thing. The more people that watch your show, the more people will want to see it live and support you in other ways that they can afford. But if you still believe that you would rather someone not see your show than to view it from a mediocre recording, then there's probably no arguing or convincing you otherwise. Now, there is one argument that is very hard to disagree with in terms of the opposition of bootlegs, that they are a distraction to actors and performance. Now, as an actor, I know how annoying it is to see someone's face illuminated in the audience, not paying attention to the show. It's incredibly distracting. However, I do think there is a solution to this problem. Most shows have professional recordings done of one of their performances. These recordings are rarely released to the public, but they pretty much usually exist. Actors know ahead of time that they are being recorded, thus not causing a distraction during a performance. Now, what if producers release these recordings online to purchase or to rent? The market of bootlegs would disappear pretty much overnight, as currently they pretty much exist out of necessity. Theaters have the power to remove that necessity. I mean, we know this strategy already proved successful. In 2007, Legally Blonde premiered a professional recording of their show on MTV. The producers profited from the sale of the recording to the TV studio, and the show reached millions of viewers over the years. If you were to log into YouTube today and search for a Legally Blonde recording, the first result is that very professional recording, sitting at almost 700,000 views. The show recording even shows up above bootlegs of regional touring and high school productions. Theaters could also post them to YouTube to purchase or rent, or even after a couple of months post them for free to get ad revenue. And in fact, we're starting to see this more and more during the COVID-19 pandemic. But again, I'm not going to dive too much into that. Young folks are constantly asking for more accessible ways to access theater for folks outside of New York City, yet the model of Broadway has not really answered that call. Most young folks that pay to purchase a soundtrack of a show or a signed playbill off of Twitter would totally pay $5 to $10 to rent a professional recording of the show. In fact, this is already happening within the bootleg community. Recent recordings of shows are typically traded or sold within private online communities on Reddit, Tumblr, and Twitter. If you're accepted into these private spaces, new bootlegs can be purchased from other traders for $5 to $10 typically. These private communities want to hold onto new recordings to prevent them from being widespread too soon, especially when that show is still on the stage. Recording a show is very illegal, and it has become very easy for theaters to pinpoint which night a recording was taken in the general seating area of where a person took the recording. Because of this, most bootlegs are held by an elite group behind a paywall for the first few months after it is recorded. Now, with that being said, there is a large number of people in these communities that try to keep bootlegs within these private spaces to hold on to their monetary values. It is interesting to think about the capitalistic hierarchies that have formed within the bootleg community, but again, deeper discussion, 10 minutes. However, there are strong arguments within the bootleg community about this very thing. Many people, including myself, believe it is wrong to profit off of someone else's art. Yes, a recording of a bootleg is taking a risk by doing it, but that does not entitle them to profit off of someone else's art. Also, by charging for bootlegs and keeping them hidden within private communities, you're not making that art any more accessible, which to me is kind of the whole point of bootlegs. Again, all of this can be combated by theaters releasing their own recordings. Now, before I wrap things up, I want to quickly touch on a few more ideas without going into detail. Bootlegs are great for disabled folks too. Some positives include blind folks who cannot watch a show on stage could watch it magnified or close up on a screen. People with limited mobilities who cannot make it to theaters can view shows from their own spaces. People with sensory issues would be able to control the volume and atmosphere of their viewing place. Hard of hearing folks can use captions on recordings. There are countless more examples. And another positive is that recording shows could provide those who have already seen the show on stage an opportunity to view it again without the large ticket price. A fan of the show who has already seen it in person can purchase it online and relive their experience in a more accessible way. Now, one final negative that I want to touch on is the loss of intellectual property that comes with bootlegs. Directors, designers, actors are not receiving compensation or credit for their work, and oftentimes smaller productions like at a college or high school level will use bootlegs as, quote, inspiration for their design or staging of a show. I mean, there are currently a lot of rules put in place by unions to protect actors and directors and designers for their work, yet bootlegs pretty much break all of these rules. Also, copyright laws exist to protect these writers and composers of the shows, which are very much violated by bootlegs. TLDR, bootlegs are important to the accessibility of Broadway shows. Their existence is vital to the success of Broadway in the future, as it provides an entry point into theater for younger audiences. There are some negatives to bootlegs, but those can mostly be combated by theaters taking control of the market by releasing their own professional recordings of the shows to purchase online or to sell to television networks, a la live performances on NBC. Thank you all for watching. I have linked some things down below in the description of the video that I use for reference. If you're interested in this topic at all and would like to read more theory or just more information in general, please check them out.